Hi, I'm Tori, and today I'm going to be reviewing Terry Pratchett's Discworld series, at least the part of it that I have read so far. These are all of the Discworld books that I own that are in my possession right now. Sometimes I loan them out to people. And I have read all of these and loved every single one of them. So, for those of you who have not yet experienced the wonders of Discworld, Terry Pratchett is an author from the UK who writes some books in like different genres and stuff, but he is most famous for writing the Discworld series, which is a collection of about 40 different books that all take place on the Discworld. Now, the Discworld is a magical place. It is a flat world, as the name indicates. The edges of the world are all surrounded by water, and it just waterfalls off the edge. This world is carried on the backs of 4 elephants, who are in turn carried on the back of a giant turtle. And so all kinds of hijinks and stuff happen in this world. It's a very, very magical world and also a very funny world. These books can be hilarious. And my favorite thing about this series is that you don't have to read it in order. Pretty much you could pick up any book in the 40 plus book series and just start reading. And there are a few exceptions. There are some books that will spoil the endings of ones before them, so you might want to read them in order for that reason. But you can basically read any book you want in whatever order. And so because you don't have to start at the beginning, and it's actually, I kind of recommend you don't because the first book is not the best one, if you look online you can find all kinds of really cool charts that will tell you what order to read them in. And so I have loads of fun looking online to kind of see what books you should read in what order. So I will leave a link down below to Terry Pratchett's Fantastic Fiction page if you want to see what the publication order was, and that's the order that events take place in. So if you want to go through and read them chronologically, that's fine. You can definitely do that. So the fun thing about this world is that characters will crop up in different books, and there are some characters, like Death is a very popular one, and he shows up in almost every book because people die or come close to death in almost every book, and occasionally he gets his own books too. So the very first Discworld book that Terry Pratchett ever wrote was The Color of Magic, and this follows the adventures of the wizard Rincewind and a tourist Twoflower. And so then that storyline kind of continues on in these books. The Light Fantastic comes immediately after it in publication order, and then a little bit later was Sorcery. And then it goes on, but these are all the ones that I've read so far. There's another great book called Mort, which starts the series all about the character of Death, and I don't have that one with me. I loaned it to a friend. And then this one, Pyramids, takes place in a land that feels very similar to Egypt. And I think it starts the series too, and it was very enjoyable. So the very first Discworld books I ever read were these 3. These are all about some witches who live in a very small little village up in the mountains, and they are hilarious. I found these at a yard sale, I think when I was in the 2nd grade, so a long, long time ago. And they actually go Equal Rights, Weird Sisters, and Witches Abroad. And when I first read them, I read them in the complete opposite order. I read Witches Abroad, then Weird Sisters, then Equal Rights, and it didn't matter. They still made perfect sense to me. I still enjoy them. And so the Witches book series goes on, and this is actually the complete run of the Witches novels. So these all focus on the characters of Granny Weatherwax, Nanny Og, and Magritte. This first one is just Granny Weatherwax. It's sort of like a prequel. But then this little coven of witches keeps kind of growing. You meet new characters and stuff. And they are just amazing to watch. Granny Weatherwax is very businesslike, and she's quite a prude and believes things should be very proper and orderly and believes there are certain ways things should be done. And then Nanny Og is very fun-loving, and she's like that dirty old woman who you see around. She has bajillions of children for a bunch of different husbands, so she's got this like clan of children and grandchildren who wait on her, and she just goes through life having fun. And then Magritte is much younger, and she is kind of ditzy. She kind of wants to be like a forest nymph kind of witch, and she tries all these newfangled things like amulets and stuff. And then as the series go on, you meet more witches or wannabe witches, and different things happen. Characters will kind of come and go, and so sometimes the books will have this big collective cast of characters, and sometimes some of the characters will sort of step to the background and you'll just focus on a few of them, so it's fun to see that kind of shift. And then by the time you get to We Free Men, then this is kind of like it's this is interesting because it's not quite the same as the other Discworld novels. This is actually classified as young adult. The other novels aren't. And this one follows a different witch, Tiffany Aching, who is about 9 and is encountering the Nak-Mak-Feegle, or We Free Men, who are these little tiny blue pixie trouble-causing people. But this book still very much continues on the lore of the first set of witches novels. So it's hard to explain just how much fun these novels are because they're definitely a high fantasy series. There's loads of magic, and it's just so much fun to encounter different characters from all walks of life. And every little kind of run of mini-series is a little bit different. Like, the witches ones are kind of built on different fairy tales. So Equal Rights, I think, is just by itself. Weird Sisters is like a cross between a parody of Hamlet and Macbeth. Witches Abroad is a parody of every fairy tale ever. Lords and Ladies is a very loose parody of A Midsummer Night's Dream. Like, it's very subtle, but it's there. Masquerade is a parody of Phantom of the Opera, and it is hilarious. And Carpe Jugulum is a parody of vampire books, so Dracula or anything else vampire related. And then I wasn't sure if they were still continuing on the parody thing, and some of it was very subtle. So if I had to guess, I would say that the We Free Men is kind of trying to parody the Chronicles of Narnia, if it's mimicking anything, but it is, again, very subtle, and I could just be reading too much into it. So if you are thinking of starting this series, I would actually not recommend starting with the first book, A Color of Magic, because that's the first book. It came out decades ago, and Terry Pratchett was still kind of figuring out the world. So it's hilarious, and I love reading it, but it doesn't quite have the same impact as later ones. So if you are starting the series, my favorites are the witches novels. So there I would recommend starting with either Weird Sisters or Witches Abroad. Weird Sisters is very much making fun of all the, like the witches from Macbeth, cackling and plotting and stuff and arranging the fates of kingdoms. And then Witches Abroad is like a witchy road trip where they go traveling across the country on brooms and experiencing all different kinds of things. So that's very fun. I also really love the book Mort. That would be a great place to start. And then if for the newer ones, the We Free Men would also be a place to start because that's the start of a young adult series. Some people might be more comfortable with that. So I love these books so much, and they are so funny to read. Terry Pratchett's writing is so clever and sophisticated and ridiculous. It's just incredible. He finds a way to make fun of so many different things in our world through this made-up world. He makes fun of social structures, makes fun of business and a little bit of politics and a lot of stuff about human nature, and it's just so much fun to read these. There are passages from these books that I can just not read without laughing out loud, and most of my favorite quotes are from Terry Pratchett novels. So all of these books are amazing. I am definitely going to continue collecting them and continue reading them. My goal is to someday have read the entire series, but then I'll be kind of sad that there aren't any more left because I love how many books there are. You can always go grab another Discworld novel. So these books are incredible, and I highly recommend that you pick one up.